We go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill and Ammon's Bogus Hangout. I have people introduce themselves. Doc?
Hey everybody, Doc Sheldon here, Intrinsic Value SEO and Search News Central. And I'm just another curmudgeon.
Copycat. Copycat.
Wait, we've got a room full of curmudgeons.
I must have missed something.
Funny.
Terry, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Terry Van Horn, SEO Pros, SEO Dojo, and International Website Builders. Still working on events or in event programming, mainly the schema. Very interesting stuff. A lot of as I see it, that you know how with SEO now on stuff like calendars and whatnot,
yeah.
If you set those up and use the schema, it enables you to handle all the old events and stuff like that.
Oh.
So you don't have a lot of the issues that you have with the way things are now, as far as dealing with past events and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything like that, the data itself follows a structure or explains a structure. It's a bit like the relationship in links, and anything you can do to mark that up usually helps you in one way or another.
Yeah. I'm going to look at trying to do some actions and stuff this time too. Probably work the announcements for the shows on the news site. I'll probably write a program to do that. So I'll work for a client and get the schema worked out. Then I'll build an application myself and use the same program. But I do everything at a good rate anyhow, so only because I know I'm going to reuse the code. I only program stuff myself that I know is going to be useful in the future. So that's about what I'm up to and doing the launch. Finding some real cool episodes on the new site, so probably for the launch, that's what I'll do is start posting in social media and stuff. Some of these old goldies that we've done, Bill, Doc, Ammon, Dave. So on local and like I said in another place, the forensic stuff is, I don't think anyone covered it as closely as we did week to week. So it worked out well.
It always surprises me.
That's the first, Doc. Never seen your wife on camera before.
No, she's sneaking around. Time to make a debut.
Yeah, she forgets that I do this every fucking week.
It surprises me sometimes that people miss the right ways to structure their data. Look at all the talk in the last couple of years, ever since Hummingbird, about, voice search is coming, you need to answer questions, which, okay, forget that that's completely wrong and they've misunderstood the algorithms in play. It's not important that you write questions into your content. It's important that you provide the right answer. Mm-hmm. How people link to you is more important.
That's been true, a secret to SEO since SEO started.
Yeah,
exactly.
Even before Google.
So if you
You're
were going
before-
to do something to answer questions, the correct way would be to look at the sites that rank for things that have a defined answer. And they use definition markup.
Yes,
And
they do.
yet, not one of those articles ever bothered to even mention the fact that there is a tag for actually providing a definition of something and therefore clearly marking it as an answer. If you were going to try that technique, you would definitely want to be using definition type markup. And yet, they don't cover it.
Yeah, I noticed in some of those extra, I don't know what you would call them, where they're asking all the questions right after the first couple of listings.
Oh.
That would be perfect for that kind of stuff, Ammon, because you can see the questions that are being asked there and try and do the same thing.
Yeah.
Or think of another question that may be being asked related to it and put an answer for that one.
Exactly. In other words, the thing that we might have heard of back in the 90s called an FAQ page.
Yep.
Yes.
And the questions on that fact page are a lot less important to search than the answers.
Exactly.
Agreed. We heard that back in the 90s, and it is a beast when somebody asks you those questions.
We used to use FAQs for the optimization. Found it was a really easy way to optimize for a hard term.
Really?
Dandy place for some long tail focusing, yeah. And especially if you, from the fact, if your answer links to an internal page that amplifies the answer, you can direct some of that ranking.
Yeah, but also the anchor text within. So if you're doing where you put the question at the top and the answer's at the bottom, and you click and it takes you down to it, that works really well. Always has.
So Google did come out with a patent about 15 years ago on definitions, which used to be at the top of some search results, like featured snippets are now.
Uh-huh.
And it said things like, don't provide answers that are links, like C:, and then a URL. Because that would make it look like you weren't the authority, even if it's a link to something on your own site. It's sort of a signal that you don't have the answer at your fingertips.
Yeah.
I want to
So
say
you're just
you are
siphoning
right.
traffic.
And I think
is
over time, Google have learned, or the algorithm has learned, let's face it, there's a lot of machine learning in these days, that FAQ pages often provide succinct answers. They often provide very clear answers and can help with a lot of related questions. So I think there are certain searches where it actually boosts the ranking of FAQ pages, which are easy to recognize because the structure of them is pretty easily identifiable on block level.
Well,
Interesting. I just thought of something. One of the pages that I have ranking for a fairly hard term in our industry is linked to from the FAQ page. So it gives a short answer and then a link internally to a longer answer.
Yep.
And that page is ranking.
mm-hmm.
Yep.
I also recently saw a situation where the question in the FAQ was and the response were worded somewhat differently, using different semantic terms than the internal page that had it in its meta description and had it in the content, but they were pulling the FAQ statement as the description in the SERP, which I found interesting. for a term that was not included in the FAQ. It was included on the internal page. It was a synonymous term, if you will, you know, semantically similar term, but it was not the same term, and it was actually pulling that from the FAQ. Thought that was interesting. I meant to mention that the other day, and it slipped my mind.
Mine too.
Fab says he can't join us because Google's playing up. Do you remember the problem you had setting up the account, Bill?
Yeah.
Fab
I
says
had that
he's getting a
too.
similar message. Says he can't join because he blocked someone.
Oh,
Because he's what?
Oh, he's in now, so he's figured it out.
he got in, but he's muted.
Yeah, I probably fixed it now. For some reason,
Hey,
hello everyone. For some reason,
hey,
I probably
buddy, how are you?
good. Thank you. I probably blocked notifications, and then yeah.
Oh, so you're the one.
Bad, yeah, bad things happen when you block notifications.
You did not know.
That's why I couldn't send invitation out today to everybody.
You
Yeah,
sent
it's
one
all
to
Fab's
me.
fault.
You sent one to. Who did you send an invitation to? I got it. I agree with Terry about the thing we said back in the 90s, the Q&A thing. I'm a 90s baby, and I grew up with that. So just to put that out on the table, and just to put that out while I'm on here, I grew up with that. So
I enjoyed when Danny Sullivan came out with a FAQ page on Hummingbird the day that Hummingbird came out. Or was it Rank Brain?
Hummingbird.
one or two.
It was Hummingbird.
I
Yeah,
think he did
it
it
was
with
Hummingbird.
Brain as well after it worked with Hummingbird, but Hummingbird was the first time he did it that I remember.
Right. And I asked him about it. I said, Danny, were these frequently asked questions? And when were they asked, since you came out with the page the same day the Hummingbird came out? So they couldn't have been asked too often.
Yeah.
I guess they were frequently asked at the Googleplex.
What is that?
It's where people at Google work.
I've seen the commercials, seen the advertisement, never been to it in person. Planned on it this summer, sometime this summer.
I think it's
Seen it.
invite only.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I know. I just wanna explore, have fun, and have fun because I love these hangouts. I'm trying to do one of my own, but it's hard. So gotta give hats off to you guys for allowing me to be your guest for the past, I don't know how many years I've been watching you guys, but hats off to both of y'all for allowing me to be on Hangouts on Air. I appreciate it and hope to join more in the near future.
I'm sure we'll all look forward to that. So, Fab,
you,
what have you
Ammon.
been up to? We haven't seen you in a few weeks.
It's been a while. Yeah. I've been trying to find time, and also, yeah, there's a lot going on these days. I've been traveling a bit. I was in Estonia. A lot of other stuff going on, so it's tricky. Plus, it's beautiful. You can see the weather in London. It's so sunny. It's difficult to stay in the office until 9 p.m. when the weather is like that.
Yeah, they've let you use a room with a window for a change.
This is actually my desk. Yeah, I'm today. There's probably no one left, or very few people. So this is the view from my desk. It's quite nice. Unless there are people shouting downstairs, because Nigeria just scored and it got a bit messy.
Whoa.
Yeah. Son, have they actually suspected that you're having an affair with the cleaning staff? Because it's usually just you and the cleaners left at work at night.
I don't think so, because they probably look me equally bad in the morning when I'm still around, and like when they find my cups next to the desk, after cleaning hours. So no, I'm pretty confident they that's an option they excluded.
It's kind of a tradition of SEO. We used to always be the last ones to leave, often there late into the evenings. If you were lucky in the big .com days, you were having a bit of a party with some beers with some of the developers and programmers as well. But yeah, those desks used to have a lot of pizza boxes and coffee cups and late nights.
I guess that recently I probably didn't do a lot of long hours, but it's also because I've been traveling a bit, so it's been quite random in terms of schedule. But yeah, apart from it, same old.
It's one of those careers, isn't it, where sometimes we are juggling so many different moving pieces that sometimes once you've picked them all up and started juggling, you don't want to stop at the end of the day and have to, spend an hour picking up all the pieces again the next day. You'd rather just work late and get it done.
Yeah, especially, if you find the time to not be disturbed, or if you're in the mood of doing something.
That's the real ticket there. Get rid of all the interruptions.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yes.
My days are becoming increasingly unproductive. Luckily there are more people who in the team that are really good and can help me, so it doesn't just rely on my ability, but they're getting so unproductive these days that I will sometimes I'm really starving to do some work, but it just doesn't happen. But yeah.
Well, these days, a lot of your work is directing others, and 10% of each of their productivity is directly down to you. So
I don't know, I spend quite a lot of time with the guys and everyone, right? So that's probably part of my job at this stage. But even doing a bit of code research wouldn't hurt my spirit, or even doing something real sometimes. But yeah, but we're trying to balance quite a bit. So hopefully, it's probably more a matter of me being organized as well, to combine both spending time with people and then actually doing stuff. So, yeah. But
it makes you think of that day when Larry Page finally got told he wasn't allowed to just tinker with the code anymore, because there were so many different departments, so many things going on at once. Even he couldn't be aware of all of them, and what he was tinkering with might be undoing somebody else's months of work.
Yeah. And also we are. So when I started, it was basically me and 2-3 full stack devs. Now we have 20-ish people in the team, engineers, designers, content guys. So there are some jobs where I'm probably not the best person to have a say, and I'm very happy to let them decide, right? So we are increasingly hiring people who are good at particular things. So yeah, sometimes I have very little to add. It would take me more time to pick it up. Plus, these guys are probably better than me. So,
everyone needs to remember that the conductor of an orchestra doesn't have an instrument. He just makes sure that everyone else plays at the right time and in unison, and not at cross purposes, not playing across each other.
First time I heard that analogy, Ammon, I think it was actually talking about a madam in a whorehouse rather than a conductor. It still holds true.
But good job.
That was my dad's version, anyway.
I agree. You don't play with your hands.
It's there was a discussion in one of the groups earlier this week about, profit margins. And, I was trying to explain to people, the one advantage of the service business is that your profit margins are supposed to be immense. You really should be aiming for 70-80% gross margin.
Well, you know what I like about it, Ammon, is the fact that you can change it so easily.
Yeah.
If you're reselling a product or manufacturing a product, trying to knock your production costs down or cost of acquisition down by more than a couple percent is a real challenge. But as you get more efficient or find new tools and whatnot, you can add 20-30% to your margin on services real quickly.
Yep.
Wow.
We are, for instance, at TransferWise, we are scaling marketing costs in order to offer more and more cheaper transfers. But at the same time, the other part is also scaling the infrastructure cost, and some of these very hard. It's very difficult to move some of these fixed costs that we have when we operate. So, like in our case, when it comes to scaling the team, is fairly easy so far, or at least, right? We had challenges in some channels, but it's possible, right? Versus like the art costs sometimes are probably more of a longer term projects than.
But it is really true that, the more people you add to a team, although each is able to contribute their own work, and it should, scale that way, it's not linear, because for every person added, there is a certain amount of reporting to everybody else what you're up to, so they don't get in your way.
Yep.
And finding out what everybody else is up to so that you don't get in theirs, and vice versa.
And that's assuming each individual on the team is highly efficient. And if one of them isn't, then your time lag increases exponentially.
So we tend to divide like, not people, but we tend to divide stuff that we do in probably two parts. One is places where you linearly grow, right? For instance, right, if you start publishing an article on a blog, each article will capture a certain amount of keyword that will have a certain amount of volume, and in that case, you linearly grow. The more every day you publish one article with one guy, and you cannot go faster than that. That guy won't produce 1 million of articles in a month, right? The number that he can produce is the same amount. Versus like we have other area where we work with engineers and product, where we can see we have tools and products that we are able to scale, and that's where even adding one person, obviously these guys are obviously fully, as you say, fully self-sufficient, right? None of them required like guidance on what is SEO or how to code this up, right? That's the requirement. But in that case, some of the stuff scales probably better than adding one landing page at a time.
Although, to an extent, even the writing scales somewhat. Think of newspapers. And one of the ways that they scale up and become more efficient the more writers they have is that they've got more people contributing to the morgue files. The morgue files are the databases of facts you've dug up in research for one story, that the next time you run a story, those facts are there to hand. You can look them straight up and bang, there's all these statistics you can already use and add to your research this time. So there is a certain amount of scalability even in something like that.
We managed to get way more efficient. When we first started, it was literally one guy by himself, versus now there's like a team of like 10 plus people, probably 10-ish. And initially we even had one guy running production metrics and operation KPIs in a way that we figured out that it was quite easy without putting people in a working like a factory, right? So they could easily optimize the process in terms of like publishing, drafting, reviewing, editing, doing all that kind of stuff. And we managed to optimize quite a bit within there. But then at some point you lose. There's so little that you can add. So that's why you have to add people. And that's where it scales as much as you add people to that.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. It is one of the things for anyone who is early on the road to scaling. Think of modularity early on. Think of ways of taking modules from the work one person does that can be reused, whether it's their research notes, whether it's snippets of articles. You know, there's all kinds of things you can make modular, and those increase efficiency down the line.
Yeah, I'm going to be discussing roughly this topic I'm going to Turing Fest in Edinburgh in a month or so, and I'm going to be sharing this topic, how we scale by modularizing some stuff into products, and because I think it's fairly unfolded in the industry. Like not many people talk about how to build the CMS. Not many people talk from scratch, right? Not many people talk about how to do other build side components and modularizing some stuff. Probably is not too much in detail because this is not a very domain-specific conference, but I'll try to cover some of this stuff in that talk. Yeah.
It's one of the things I noticed when looking at some of the offshore web development agencies is they do tend to reuse their code quite a lot across many projects, and some of them don't do it that well. Some of them literally, instead of modularizing and making things so that they can easily be put into other chassis, they just take the whole site and then just change whatever is the minimum they need to make it a new project.
But that's probably also the history of WordPress to some degree, and that's why sometimes it's not good to to digest in the same code that anyone else has got.
Yeah, there's a lot of plugins that are lazy and bloated.
There we go.
Especially bloated. Yeah.
Especially.
I think that there's big parts of websites too that can be modularized, like contact pages and all that stuff. I have one form, and all I do is grab the Excel database, upload it, set the type, the variant on the database, on the fields, and I'm done. And all the programming is the same because all the form names are the same. So if there's one or two extra fields, I add them to the programming, and it's done. 10-minute job.
Yep.
I do it too from time to time.
It's sometimes hard for companies to realize how SEO can be modularized, but it is one of those things where if you're running a larger agency, having somebody specialize in research and then feed that research to all of the others is a lot more effective than having them all having to dig up their own research.
Even like the whole tooling side of things, right? So once you figure out what is your forecasting tooling, I think the guys at like Distill and some other places, they do that fairly well, in a way that like once they figure out that this is like a problem that I can solve with this product, no matter how simple is that, then I build something that anyone can use. And I think not many people actually do it. So, at least from my past experience, not many. And because also it's challenging for like an agency to hire, like even to budget within their P&L and other stuff, those type of resources, because usually you have client hours that go against client retainers or like contract, and then this is all extra that like it looks like a cost in day one, but then it will help all the other accounts to become more efficient. I don't know if you can hear football fans, but
Wow, you are in London, so you're gonna get that.
Yeah, our office is just on top of Box Park, and everyone is watching football. That's why.
Well, according to online, neither one of them has scored yet, except they've just still been empatado 1-1.
If you think it's loud there, Fab, you should.
It's loud in the U.S. Hey, today's voting day in Maryland, so it's loud.
You've got to imagine what a bar in Nigeria is like right now.
Loud.
Noise.
It should be loud. You know, for them to even get 1 point against Argentina is no mean feat.
Yep.
I mean, Nigeria used to have good players, right? Then, like, how you compete is another story in these events, but they have good teams in general.
England, most countries get allowed for soccer, football, hockey. They get allowed for sports. Keep the train rolling. What's next?
Obviously, the flip side to the whole specialization argument, you know, having one person who does the research is what happens if that person leaves and nobody else knows how to do it. You know, I've seen agencies where they specialize their staff because, you know, if you give your staff the job to do that they like most, they're usually most effective and most efficient in it. But it can make it very difficult because you then always need to hire people for specific roles ready to go in them rather than being able to take somebody on and always train them.
Yeah. But I guess the fact of people leaving is roughly the same challenge, no matter, even like if you hire people who are a bit more of a generalist, right? That's why, like, as a company, I find having worked in agency before, I find very tricky sometimes to, you know, we don't work with agency at the moment, and I don't think we will, but in general, it's a tough choice because you have to you never know what you're gonna get, right? And like one day the team is good, and then tomorrow the team could change completely.
Yeah, I think the best answer I've come across for it is to have every member of a team act as a second to somebody else with a different role. So yeah, here's the thing you do most, but you have to at least one day a week help this guy do his job as well so that you can step up and do that when he's on leave, when he's got stuff to do, or should he ever leave.
No.
I agree with that to some extent. It's a good way for the person who's got the most skill to mentor someone to kind of, you know, fill in. And sometimes that's the only way you can get them.
Me too. Hey, Tim.
It's unfortunate. An awful lot of people are insecure, so the idea of training someone else to possibly be able to do their job scares the hell out of them. Afraid they're going to, you know, lose their negotiation points. When I was a business consultant, I was always fighting with managers who would refuse to train their people. They wanted to keep the jobs that they did totally private, so nobody would even know what they did, much less how to do it. And, you know, my philosophy has always been, I want you to be capable of doing my job. That's going to make me keep learning. Plus, if there's an opening for a vice presidency, I'm not getting held back because they can't afford to lose me. I got Johnny here can step in and take my place. But that's apparent. I found that's a very rare attitude.
Yeah. I think there's a lot that everybody can learn from military hierarchies and the idea of a chain of command, and particularly the idea of adjutants and lieutenants, people that can step in and just simply do your role whenever you're not able to do it. Hey Tim, how's it going?
Good. I'm good. How's everybody doing? Sorry, I'm late. What have you guys been talking about besides training your staff to be able to take over your job? you know, I think part of leadership is helping those that you are responsible for to do their jobs, number one, and to grow. Sometimes that's hard in some organizations, but I used to tell people that work for us in our home care company, people that work in the office at least, if you're still doing this in a couple of years, you know, you're not going to go anywhere in your career. You need to be advancing and get out of here, out of these office jobs.
Mm-hmm. I managed 22 people at the most when I worked for government. And cross-training, getting people to learn each other's jobs was part of the challenge, but it was necessary because some days some people would get so busy that they needed a second hand. And if they had somebody trained who could do it, it made their life bearable.
Mm-hmm. Towards the end of my career with, commercial software companies, I was a program manager for a company called Ariba. Anyway, so that's a unique situation because you're responsible for keeping everything on track and on schedule, but you have no direct control over the resources that are producing those results. And I'll tell you what, the managers that were good leaders and good developers of their people were the ones that I enjoyed working with. The ones that were boneheads and kept everything, I don't know, secret or refused to cooperate, those were the guys I didn't like working with.
Some people were afraid of sharing what they did on a day-to-day basis with other people when training them. Because like somebody said, they were afraid it was going to make them vulnerable to potentially losing their jobs.
You know, quite often they're just hiding the fact that they're incompetent, aren't they? That's like, for me, I would never be scared of someone taking my job. Like, just wouldn't be. I share everything I know, right?
I made a point of writing detailed notes for everything that I did so that somebody else could step in and take over for me at any point in time.
Well,
I was so organized, it was kind of scary. But it's worth doing because people could step in and do things when I wasn't there.
To me, the only reason that you would do that is if you weren't confident about what you were doing. Like, that's a sign that you're not confident in what you're doing.
Well, I wanted to
it can be, sure.
Take vacation days.
Yeah. I back in the 80s, early 80s, I lost an opportunity because a guy died in a company, opened up a vice presidency, and it was an engineering department. I was an engineer, and I was the facilities manager. So I put in my bid for it. And I got called in and interviewed at 3 different levels by various department heads. And then I was told by the vice president of the company that they couldn't afford to lose me in facilities management. Well, I had 12 mechanics and me. I didn't even have a secretary at the time. You know, just me and 12 guys out on the floor rolling their toolboxes around. So I didn't have anybody that could possibly step in. And that's where I learned that lesson. I said, okay, that ain't going to happen again. I'm not going to miss an opportunity to double my salary and move up the ladder because they need me more where I am. I'll make them glad to get rid of me where I am.
And you can always give them the work that you don't like doing, and they think they're getting a chance to learn something.
I will say, too, that some of this depends on the company. So that last company I mentioned, Ariba, which has since been acquired by another big company, they had at least when I was there, they had a policy of getting or requiring the managers every so often, I think it was once a year, to divide to assess the overall performance of their employees and divide them into groups of A, B, and C, and then they required them to divide the B's into A's and C's, and then they made them get rid of the C's, basically lay them off or fire them or whatever, and then go out and hire more people who hopefully would be good people. But the problem is, I mean, that sounds kind of like, I don't know, sounds like management by Attila the Hun, but eventually you'd have a better and better workforce. But it didn't work out that way because, you know, guys that had really done a good job of developing their people, well, the ones that had integrity refused to go along with the process. And I actually know of one that got fired because he wouldn't go along with it, which was terribly unfair.
Yeah, that kind of a policy could just be demoralizing to the troops.
As a manager, it's part of your job to develop the people under you as best they can, to learn new things, to experience new stuff, and to be able to back up other people. If you're not teaching people how to do that, you're doing something wrong.
I agree.
Yeah, I used to do that when I was a chef, call cooks all the time. Guy not doing his job, you're late once, you're gone. You know, the people that weren't any good, I just got rid of them like that. As soon as they were late, I'd say, yeah, you didn't call in, you're done. That's all. The way I look at it is you should be constantly trying to make your team better and better. And if you just hang on to the same people, you got to have a system to get rid of the people that are not pulling their weight. Otherwise, you start losing those who are because they resent the fact that someone's not.
Yeah, that's a very real fact.
That's the worst thing, especially in a kitchen. I found was there would be open rebellion if someone wasn't pulling their end, because that means at service time, stuff ain't always as far along as it should be. And yeah, for sure, you got to watch your staff.
I worked in restaurants when I was in college, and I used to trade work or training from the chefs. I started as a dishwasher, and within a couple months, I was a line cook because I'd done extra cleaning to have the chefs teach me how to do things like saute and how to learn proper knife skills, things like that.
Well, the thing is that I think a lot of people forget that most people that are good at something, whether it be making an omelet or building a wall, most people are going to get off on the compliment of somebody wanting to learn from them. You know? I mean, there's sure there's going to be an outlier now and then who's just going to want to hold close to his vest. But if they're approached properly and say, man, you make the best omelets. God, how do you make them so fluffy? I wish you could teach me how to do that. I could really like to wow my girlfriend some weekend. Most guys will take the extra 5 minutes when they can to show you how. And if you're showing some motivation, most guys will, when I say guys, most people will feel some satisfaction in helping you develop and grow.
Right. And I eventually became a supervisor in that same kitchen, and I was teaching the dishwashers how to cook too.
How to saute, eh? Full circle. Love it.
It made sense to do that.
It's like that in cooking, especially. I know when I did my first real high-end banquet, a chef that wasn't even working with me worked all night with me, showing me how to, you know, present big salmon whole, you know, slice of, you know, the presentation, how to cook it and all that. We spent 2 days preparing for this huge banquet. And he did it on his own time because he knew when I worked with him, I worked hard and he knew that I wanted to learn, and he liked to show people who wanted to learn because he said to me, it's important that we pass this stuff along or it doesn't get passed along. It ends with us. So, and I wish there was more of that in our industry Because, you know, there's stuff that when me and Bill and Doc and Ammon are gone, no one's going to know that stuff because they haven't lived through it.
Trying to share some of it.
Billy's religiously documenting every sentence of it. So,
I think there's a lot more.
as long as someone pays for the servers.
There's a lot more people in our community out there that are sharing too. You know, they're not as visible, perhaps. They're not talking about it, and maybe they're not doing it in the channels that we hang out in. I think there's more of it than we tend to think.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Unfortunately, there are people who haven't yet mastered the craft who are passing along what they think is knowledge.
Yeah, there is that. Yeah.
Share the wealth, share the dross.
Those are the guys that are burning their omelets. Yeah.
But I think in general it's very similar, Terry. I mean, you know, we open this hangout up every week. Anyone can drop in here, learn, ask questions, and that's what we love about it. You know, we love the fact that somebody could turn up and we can start them on that journey or help them go another step on that journey.
Yeah, I have approached an awful lot of colleagues in this community over the last 15 years and asked them specific questions. Hey, how do you do this? You know, I see this and this. I'm not sure which is the right way or which is the best way. I have yet to ever have any of them say they didn't have the time or they weren't inclined to share. They've all taken the time to show me how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, I can think of maybe a couple of people out there that I have never asked that I kind of suspect might tell me to go F off, but it's because
So
we've
therefore
had
you never ask.
well, it's because we've bumped heads before, and you know, there's bad blood there. But I mean, the folks that know what they're doing generally want to teach it, want to share it. Now I know, for instance, Alan Bleiweiss. Alan doesn't have a whole lot of time, and he doesn't have a whole lot of inclination to spend time teaching people. But I have gone to him on 2 or 3 occasions and say, hey, how are you doing this? Or why are you doing this that way? And he's taken the time to go through it with me and share stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, my philosophy has always been pay it forward. I can't pay back the folks that have helped me over the years, so I pay it forward. If a new kid comes along and wants to learn something, I want to help them learn it, but I want to help learn it the right way. That's why I'm so damn careful about what I say, because, you know, this is my opinion. This is not fact. This is my impression. You know, this may or may not be the case, but here's what this is the way I work because this is what I think is the case, and let them know that just because I said it, that don't mean it's right. There's a 50-50 chance it ain't.
There's a lot of our profession that is a craft. Because there are so many different strategies and so many different tactics. You can't say this strategy will always work, because what happens if the other guy's using the same strategy but ahead of you? You know, your strategy is going to go nowhere.
Or doing it better.
You know, you've got to adjust your strategy for what the other guys are doing, and how effective any single tactic is going to be is going to depend on how strong other guys are in this area and that area, and where they're weak and where you're weak. You know, it's always custom built. So to an extent, we're always sharing our advice and our practices, but it's a bit like craftsmanship. The way I sculpt something may be different to the way somebody else sculpts something. He may hold a chisel with 3 fingers and I hold it with a closed fist. What matters is, do we have enough control over that chisel? And what are we turning out?
And with SEO, we also have an ever-changing type of mud that we're dealing with.
Also, is execution. You can test someone.
And a chisel that's sharp one instant and dull the next.
You're not always the sharpest tool in the box.
Well, like you were saying this morning, Ammon, in that ranking thread over on Facebook, so many things affect it. You can't look at what your buddy did on his site and expect it to work on your site. Hell, you can't even look at what worked for you last month on your site and be sure it's going to work again on your site.
That's my point. My point about the muds or the clay is ever changing.
I was pointing out the fact that, you know, you can run the site because there's a lot to how Google puts together an algorithm. There are an awful lot of signals. We know that rank brain is machine learning, and therefore you can guarantee that over time things like day parting are going to become more a part of the algorithm, that it will look at your location, what time of day it is there, and serve different results, whether you're at lunch in the office, at work in the afternoon in the office, or at home on your computer, looking for your own entertainment. It changes the intent.
And the machine learned aspect of it changes without too much knowledge on the part of the search engineers who program it.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily know why it returns some of the results it returns, except they're often the results they desired for it to return.
I bet you there's times they're as surprised as we are.
Like as not.
I was going to say that when it comes to technique, that's another thing. Because in the end, it all comes into implementation. I can tell you exactly how I do something. Doesn't mean you're going to get the same results. It's all about implementation.
Yeah. It was another thread on Facebook this week. Somebody had linked to these, you know, wonderful, here's everything you need to know. This guide works all the time, always. I think it was from Brian Dean, which should tell you what it was worth. But the main thing, I said, look, you know, here's the problems with that. And here's the fact he's lying to you in the first 30 seconds of the video, which he was. And he said, well, okay, but where do I find a guide? And I said, well, okay, imagine for a minute that a perfect strategy existed. It doesn't, but imagine for a second it did. Mm-hmm. Right, everyone hears about it, everyone uses it. Now, they're now all using the same strategy.
How much longer do you think it'll work?
People in the same SERP are using the exact same strategy. Which one wins? And how many people using that strategy lose? The only thing you can do to really master strategy is to have options. The more techniques you understand, and you understand both the strengths and the weaknesses of each, the more you can look at what your competitors are doing and come up with the strategy that is custom built to beat them. It plays your strengths to their weaknesses. And unless you're doing that, you're not going to win, because SEO is a competitive thing.
Totally agree with that.
Yep. Also, as Terry said, is about the execution, right? It's not that you copy paste the code from one place to another, right? So you could tell someone exactly what to do, but then when they will go and execute that the same thing, there's no chance it's going to look exactly the same, right? So
I bet you could give 10 SEOs the exact same technique using the exact same sites, and there would be a big range of results.
Well, sure.
And that's even promoting on the same sites, because it's what you put in to the listing. It's the category you pick. It's so many things that it all adds up.
Yeah.
A lot of SEOs look at the PR, and that's how they make their decision, right?
So, ultimately, I think our job is always not necessarily to show somebody how I sculpt a particular thing or how I put together a set of shelves. It's to teach them about the techniques that go into it, why I have chosen those, why I think those techniques were right for this job, maybe with a mention of what would be the wrong techniques? What would be possible alternative techniques I could have used if it wasn't for this factor or that factor? Now they're starting to learn about how to put together a strategy of their own by understanding the tactics involved, the techniques involved, and how to play them to their strengths and cover their weaknesses. And I think that's the only way you can really deal with SEO.
Agreed.
Yeah, I use the website, see what it needs, see what it does well, and go from there. Then I use the technique that will accomplish what I want. But you have a lot of people, they're selling packages. I'm going to do this, 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 and this on every website I get, regardless.
And guarantee you #1 position.
There's
See,
someone that,
and thank God we see less and less of that.
Yep.
Because I think now anybody who guarantees, that's a red flag for consumers. And well, it should be.
people still sell pre-made stuff for content. I just got like an email from someone who probably didn't open our website and send a 20 pages PDF on their content plan for the next 6 months. I was like, there's a good chance it's
Cookie
not gonna work.
Yeah, I think there's still a lot of small business owners though that will want to be promised that you'll get them to #1, and they'll never be satisfied when you tell them you can't guarantee that. That you'll do the best possible, and that sometimes they might achieve that on one day and then not be that the next day. But that I really do get that. Long ago, before I got into this, of course, I was the guy that was trying to find somebody that would help me rank my website for my home care company, 2003, 2004. And I was that guy. I wanted to be ranked #1. That's what I wanted the SEO to promise me back when SEOs kind of were beginning to be around more. And I get that. I really do.
In so many situations, the whole goal of even wanting to be #1 is lunacy. #1 is the first site you abandon. It's not the site you stick at.
So that's part of a conversation that we have to have with people like that. And so, when I talk with somebody, I try to talk them through it. But if I can't talk them down from that, you have to promise we're going to be #1. I have to be honest and just say, then I'm not a good fit for you.
I start by telling them the #1 listing is an ad. You want PPC, right?
Yeah.
And #2 and #3.
And
I don't like it when you're a smart ass with them.
I can get you #5. I can guarantee you that. Here's the thing. For what a lot of these SEO companies charge, I know ones that go out and just buy the PPC ad for people when they make their guarantee. And it should be a red flag because nobody can guarantee rankings. Nobody. The fact that they're saying they can, they've already started the relationship by lying to you, Tim.
But the consumers don't. Our potential clients don't always know that.
But Tim, the analogy that I'll give you that I used here about a month and a half ago with a prospect who wanted that. He says, well, this guy's guaranteeing me #1 position. And I tried to just tell him, well, this guy's full of shit. He can't. Nobody can. That was going right over his head. So I used the analogy. I said, okay, look, I hand you a $100 bill and the keys to the car. Can I guarantee that you can get from here to Yuma, Arizona? That you can make it all the way to Arizona on the $100 worth of gas? No, because I don't know where you're buying your gas, so how much you're paying for it. I don't know how fast you're driving. I don't know which mountain road or the desert road you're going to take. I don't know how heavy your foot is. Too many things come into play. That's the same way with ranking a website. There's too many things coming into play for anybody to be able to guarantee that. You might be able to make it all the way to El Paso on $100. I might only make it to Calexico. He got it. He understood that.
Even PPC, you can't guarantee #1.
No.
You probably heard about mesothelioma. Mesothelioma was one of the first keywords where it easily reached the maximum bid. Law firms that wanted to do the mass action cases regarding mesothelioma, there were already more maximum bids than would even get you onto page 2.
Wow.
They're paying the maximum the system possibly allows, and you still can't get. There's so many people doing that, you still won't get any coverage if you're the latest bidder to bid that.
Yeah.
Furthermore, there's a lot of markets where people aren't very good at pay-per-click, and they're actually paying more than that click is worth. Can you get above them? Well, technically you could, but you'll lose your money doing it.
Guys, all I'm saying is I understand the motivation of the business owner, especially small business owners who don't understand this. And if they're willing to listen and be educated, then they can be a good potential client. That's all I'm saying.
Right. If they don't understand, right, to me, right, Dan, if I explain to them why, someone shouldn't guarantee and what someone has to do to guarantee. I can guarantee you number one, but I might have to make 250 websites to do it. Is that a good strategy? No, but I guaranteed you number one and I got you number one, right? Like, to me, that's anybody who guarantees. And when I started, they were definitely huge in the majority, to the point where I finally, when I had SEO Pros, just said, if you've got a guarantee on your website, no, can't join, because that's not that, you can't guarantee that.
I remember that.
Yeah.
The other thing that I also, besides this topic that's related, is the people that claim that they offer a money back service, or what I'm trying.
They have a time machine, so they can turn the time back and don't.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, that's right. I've always been trying to discover unobtainium, and I've never been able to. But that's the other thing that I think we encounter out there, besides the small business owner that wants to be guaranteed number one or something like that, is the owner who says, well, this guy down the street will promise that if he doesn't do it for me, I won't have to pay him, basically.
Yeah.
Well, that's a tougher argument.
Done the work, the person, like, you're just asking to get ripped off when you work like that. And
I know that, but
sometimes you've got to explain to companies. You've got to say, look, you're a hypochondriac going to a doctor and looking for the one who guarantees that you will survive this operation. Wouldn't you rather have the doctor who will show you and prove that you didn't need the operation in the first place, you just needed these pills?
Were they blue?
But it's less and less. You don't see it very much now.
Not as much, no.
Not as much.
It has gotten better, yeah.
Well,
But there are Facebook groups where every now and then it'll pop up.
Well,
we're
luckily,
pretty much at time for this week, so let's quickly do a round of what people are up to. Bill, kick us off.
I just did a really big post listing a bunch of Google ranking signals because my team, my company, was looking for SEO training, and they wanted to link to somebody else's 200 ranking signals blog posts, and and I said, no, I'll write a post. Don't use that.
Yeah. I hope it wasn't that particular. Oh, 200 ranking signals.
Yeah, Matt Cutts says this one isn't used, so therefore he mentioned it, so it must be used.
Yeah.
Critical thinking much? No.
I think one of those was every time my site ranks number one, my cat is in the house. So my cat being in the house is a ranking signal.
Right. That's the type of logic that is a ranking signal post from that guy. I said there's no way you can quote that list, any of those things that guy says, and show it to a client. And
Was this by any chance by somebody wearing pajamas, Bill?
No, it was the other one.
It's the other brain surgeon.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was the rocket scientist.
Bill, have you thought about doing it in a manner where you name the ranking factor and then the signals that go into that factor?
You're going to have to give me an example of what you
Like,
think.
for instance, location, and then the signals that they would use on location. That sort of thing.
That's sort of like the people who ask me about that patent from Google that deals with relevance. Hey, oh, that one.
we certainly have you know, there's almost infinite signals, because as time goes on, people work out new things they can try. We've got machines that are now looking for signals that wouldn't occur to the human brain. Right. Because we'd either pass them up, oh, well, that can't possibly apply, and yet it does, and ones where it might make us uncomfortable to look at that as a signal, but a machine doesn't have that emotion.
Google says that they might use location as a ranking signal if somebody looks a place up in Google and then actually goes and visits that place in person.
Yep.
And they're tracking those visits. So they actually do know that those people looked the place up and then went there. And that's something that might boost location as a ranking signal. But is that going to cause SEOs to look places up and then drive to them?
Yeah.
I can see some SEOs doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, they'll just stick their phone in their driverless car, Bill. Automate. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. And just looking at one thing like location, yeah, there's where you are. There's the fact that they changed it to instead of using your home location, using your current location, and times when your current location won't be right. At this time of day, you're always on your way home. So if you're searching for a takeaway restaurant, it's probably to serve you at home, not where you are right now.
Right. So there's multiple places amongst your location history. Your daily commute. Yeah.
And then there's the thing we were talking about, where by looking at footfall traffic, is there a restaurant that is close to you? But traditionally, most people will go past this restaurant to choose a different one. That's a really good sign that that's not a great restaurant, if people are actively passing the closer one to get to a better one.
Except if that restaurant is the target of a review by somebody who's a local expert, in which case that review from them may boost the ranking of that place.
Yeah, I'm not certain of that yet, because they're still very poor on sentiment analysis. It's getting somewhere, but it's still very poor. So yeah, he reviewed it. He said it sucks. That's why everyone keeps going past it to get to the other one.
I wonder if we're at a point, or if we still are ways to go, where it will have us skip that restaurant that's closer because it knows that that's a type of food or a style of food that we don't very often go to have.
I think eventually they would love to include that. Certainly lots of places will do that. I think there are elements in your search history that would give them that kind of information on the current algorithms as well.
Or in your review history, the reviews you posted.
Every time you've looked up restaurants, you've ended up selecting a Thai restaurant. I think it's going to boost Thai results somewhat as one of your preferences anyway, given the existing algorithms that we know about. But yeah, it's a fascinating subject. The 200 ranking factors, and it was originally 200 ranking factors. That goes back years and years and years. And the very next year, I read something from one Googler that said it was already up to 300. In 1 year, it had increased 50%.
Microsoft came out with a paper in 2005 in which they said that they had 253 ranking factors. It was like, it seemed like a shot across the bow against Microsoft. So we have ranking factors than you do.
The fact is that, you know, they've added so much since then that I would have expected that to have grown exponentially. I think we're looking at a compound interest rate increase in ranking factors month on month, year on year. And if there are less than 500, I would be amazed. I would honestly expect the signals that go into factors to be in the tens of thousands by now.
Yeah, also the richness of these signals, right? So it's not just the factor itself.
But some of those are conditional or situational. And therefore, this thing is a ranking factor in this search, right, because you use this word that indicates this intent, and this thing is not a factor in something else. I mean, you can look at local search where PageRank is dialed right down. PageRank, the thing Google was founded on, is dialed down when we're talking local search.
Mm-hmm. And click-throughs may count after the first 500 clicks.
Or may not.
Or may not, yeah.
Yeah, we had different ways of looking at things. And it may only be that click-throughs count in some searches, particularly, say, news, where you would want to very quickly adapt, and therefore even a substandard signal, but it was coming in fast enough where you don't have some of the quality signals you depend on, such as links and action over time and click-through data over time. You can imagine some signals get dialed up as emergency measures only for things in the short term. You know, answering news, answering burstiness.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's one of the big differences that has changed. There are so many factors now. None of them is really weighted enough that it alone can move rankings. In other words, you generally have to do a few things to move it. You can't do, like in the old days, one thing and it moves.
Which is probably good.
Oh, that's really good, because that also means that signals that I don't like links, are lower as well.
It's, again, this is going to be one of those ones. It's going to depend what your competitors are doing. There's a lot of markets where you can just do that one thing because all of the competition are only doing that one thing. And if you do that one thing better than them, you'll outrank them because they've not got any other factors going on, really. So, you know, there are situations where people are just spamming links. And it seems like whoever has the most links wins, even today. But it's not. It's simply that that's the only thing anybody's got their hand on the lever of.
Yeah, but generally, if I find something like that, that's playtime. I don't look at that as competition. I'm going to beat that easily.
Before I completely forget that we were actually starting to wind up. Fab, what are you doing in the big head?
On this topic, we can close. Not much in particular, apart from work, some home viewings. I had the shit idea to like change flat. So, but I'm not sure whether that is happening. So I might be going through estate agents. And
my goodness, you might end up with actual internet access at home.
Exactly. That is actually the first criteria. The first thing that I do, I get the postcode and then I go on BT OpenReach to see if the cabinet fiber has been connected and to if the building actually has got fiber. So that's part of the search criteria. Yeah.
Well, good luck with that.
Right.
Property prices in London are beyond ludicrous.
Yeah, but at the same time, like with this, the market is not moving too much and people are really negotiating a lot. which also makes it difficult to sell my current flat, right? So it's good and bad at the same time. So yeah, it's an interesting time. I'm not sure what's gonna happen. Worst case, I have a flat to live in, and I'll just continue to stay there. Shit internet, but
Yeah, yeah. It might be cheaper just to, you know, pay for the wiring and connect yourself up to a faster internet.
that's definitely just the stamp duty to buy new property. It covers wiring probably, you know, a couple of kilometers worth of wires. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Terry, how about you, Terry? What are you up to?
This week I'll just be continuing working on what I was this weekend, doing a little promotion on the new site, and finishing it off as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Tim?
Sort of the same, just normal stuff. Working on client projects and trying to help them make more money.
Yeah. I've been going through a couple of clients sent over NDAs that were absolutely monstrous recently. It's, as far as I can see so far, it's not that there's anything I particularly object to, other than having to spend 2 hours wading through the thing to see if there's anything I object to. Yeah, these were immensely complex documents, and just checking that there wasn't anything in there that I couldn't agree to was what a waste of time. I don't get paid to go through and analyze NDAs, and it does annoy me when a client, the first thing they want to do is send an NDA. There is a part of me that objects, because look, my career is built on, you know, being absolutely confidential to my clients beyond the normal limits. There's a lot of stuff in our industry that you know, you swap tips with friends sometimes, and that is on condition that you don't pass it on. You know, I'm prepared to let you know about this thing, but I don't want it leaking out. Or if it does, I want to be the one to leak it. You know, yeah, you know, confidentiality is an absolute in our business, and sometimes having a document there's just me agreeing to, well, hang on, it's still just my word, one way or the other. It's either good enough or it isn't. Yeah. Anyway, that's us for this week. Thanks everyone for joining us, and tune in again next time for more discussion. Take care.